Now to the investigation into the suspicious death of legendary actor Gene Hackman and his wife Betsy Arakawa. The couple found dead inside their Santa Fe home, along with one of their dogs, during a welfare check.
Gene Hackman spent decades captivating audiences, but in his later years, he stepped away from the spotlight, leaving behind a legacy few truly understood. Now, with his passing, his family is left reeling, not just with grief, but with the staggering fortune he left behind. From a struggling young man mocked for chasing an impossible dream to one of Hollywood's most celebrated actors, Hackman's life was filled with triumphs and regrets. But what secrets were hidden within his final gift to his family? The cost of fame. Gene Hackman's biggest regret. When Gene Hackman set out to chase his dream of becoming an actor, he had no idea of the price he would pay. He wasn't just risking failure, he was unknowingly sacrificing the most important parts of his life. Hollywood had a way of consuming everything in its path, and for Hackman, success came at a cost he didn't fully understand until it was too late. Back in 1956, Hackman was a struggling nobody, taking on odd jobs just to survive. But he wasn't alone. By his side was Faye Maltus, the woman he had married that same year, a woman who believed in him when almost no one else did. The world doubted him, but she never wavered. Together, they built a modest life, filled with hope, even when money was tight. They had 3 children, Christopher Allen, Elizabeth Jean, and Leslie Ann. And in those early years, Hackman was still just a husband and father, not yet a star. But Hollywood and family rarely go hand in hand. In 1967, Hackman got his big break in Bonnie and Clyde, and that was the moment everything changed. It was the moment which earned him an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor. Almost overnight, he went from an unknown actor to a rising star. By the early 1970s, he was one of the biggest names in Hollywood, headlining blockbusters like The French Connection in 1971 and The Poseidon Adventure in 1972. The world couldn't get enough of him. Studios lined up with offers, money poured in, and the demands of his career grew heavier by the day. For Hackman, success became an addiction. One role led to another, one city to the next, and before he realized it, the life he had built with Faye and the kids had started slipping away. The late-night phone calls home became less frequent. Family dinners turned into distant memories. His world had become film sets, red carpets, and endless commitments. And while Hollywood celebrated his triumphs, his marriage was quietly crumbling in the background. Looking back years later, Hackman admitted in an interview with the New York Times, "You become extremely selfish as an actor. You spend your whole life craving recognition, and when success comes, it's hard to say no." The fame, the money, the temptations. It was overwhelming for a man who had once been a poor kid with nothing. Faye had waited hoping things would change, but by the time Hackman finally looked up from his career, the distance between them was too great to bridge. In 1986, after 30 years of marriage, they divorced. There were no drawn-out legal battles, no public scandals, just a quiet, painful ending to something that had once been filled with love. Years later, when asked by GQ what advice he would give his son, Hackman's response was heartbreaking. "I was away for too long. I don't have any advice to give." It was a rare moment of vulnerability from a man who had spent a lifetime burying his regrets. For the next few years, Hackman remained one of Hollywood's top actors, taking on major roles and continuing his streak of box office hits. But behind the scenes, his personal life was empty. He had success, wealth, and recognition, but no family to share it with. That changed when he met Betsy Arakawa. Unlike the women Hollywood usually paired its leading men with, Betsy had no connection to the film industry. She was a classical pianist, 32 years younger than Hackman, and worked at a gym where they first crossed paths in the late 1980s. Their relationship was quiet. without the drama or spectacle of his past. Betsy wasn't drawn to his fame. She saw the man beneath it. And for the first time, Hackman had someone who offered him peace instead of the chaos that had defined most of his life. In 1991, they married, and this time Hackman made a different choice. He no longer wanted a life consumed by Hollywood. The couple decided to step away from the spotlight, moving away from Los Angeles and into a world where the cameras couldn't reach them. It was a conscious decision to leave fame behind, to finally prioritize something other than work. But before he found this sense of peace, Hackman endured heartbreaks that left deep, unseen scars, struggles that few ever knew about. One of the deepest wounds in his life came in 1962, when his mother, Anna Elizabeth Hackman, died in a tragic house fire. According to reports, she'd been drinking heavily that night and fell asleep with a lit cigarette, igniting the flames that consumed her home. Hackman was devastated. She had been one of the only people who had ever believed he could become an actor, and yet, by the time he proved her right, she was gone. He rarely spoke publicly about this tragedy, but in one interview, he admitted that if he could choose one film for his mother to see, it would be I Never Sang for My Father in 1970, a story that closely mirrored his own life. The regret of never being able to share his success with her weighed on him for the rest of his life. But the tragedies didn't stop there. In 1982, Hackman suffered another devastating loss when his closest friend, Norman Gary, died unexpectedly. Gary, a well-known entertainment lawyer, had been one of Hackman's most trusted confidants. His sudden death led to speculation about financial troubles and unresolved matters, leaving Hackman with more questions than answers. Unable to cope with the grief, he did what he always did. He buried himself in work. He took on one role after another, using acting as an escape from the pain. During this period, he delivered some of the most defining performances of his career, starring in Under Fire in 1983, Hoosiers in 1986, and Mississippi Burning in 1988. Each film added to his legacy, cementing his place among Hollywood's greatest. But no amount of success could erase the losses he had endured. For the rest of his life, Hackman carried the weight of the sacrifices he had made, the family he lost, the tragedies he couldn't prevent, and the moments he could never get back. But what unanswered questions did Hackman face after his closest friend's sudden death? Stay tuned. The truth behind his grief is compelling. Gene Hackman, the man who refused to slow down. Gene Hackman was never one to back down from a challenge, whether on screen or in real life. His career was filled with intense roles, but his personal life had its own share of high-stakes moments. Even in his later years, he proved time and again that his fighting spirit remained intact. One unforgettable incident occurred in 2001 on the streets of Hollywood. Hackman, then 71 years old, was driving when he accidentally collided with another car. Two young men stepped out, furious over the accident. Instead of de-escalating the situation, they began hurling insults at him, unaware that they were provoking a former Marine. Hackman wasn't one to be intimidated. Without much hesitation, he threw the first punch. Chaos erupted as the three men lunged at each other, turning a quiet street into an impromptu battleground. Police arrived quickly to break up the fight, but no arrests were made. For those who knew him, the incident was just another reminder that even though he had left action-packed roles behind, Hackman had never lost the toughness that made him a Hollywood legend. But not all his encounters with danger were by choice. In 2012, Hackman was hit by a truck while cycling in Florida without a helmet. Fears of serious injury spread, but he walked away with minor wounds and never gave up cycling, though he always wore a helmet after that. His quiet Hollywood exit came in 2004 after Welcome to Mooseport flopped. No farewell speech, no press conference, he simply disappeared. Fans speculated whether the film's failure or the pressures of the industry pushed him away, while others believed he had simply grown tired of it. But the real reason was far more personal. Hackman's health had been a concern for years. In 1990, he was rushed to the hospital due to a severe arterial blockage. His condition was critical, and doctors performed an emergency angioplasty to save his life. Had he arrived at the hospital just hours later, he might not have survived. After the surgery, he made significant lifestyle changes, but continued acting for over a decade. However, by the early 2000s, the toll of long film shoots, extensive travel, and high-pressure performances became too much. He felt drained. In an interview with Empire magazine, he admitted that he no longer had the energy for the industry. His doctors advised him to avoid unnecessary stress, and for Hackman, that meant leaving Hollywood behind. If he couldn't give something his full commitment, he wouldn't do it at all. But his departure wasn't just about health. Hackman had never been fond of Hollywood's glitz and spectacle. He disliked award ceremonies, resented the need for constant publicity, and had little interest in living under a media spotlight. "I trained to be an actor, not a star," he once said. To him, Hollywood was a relentless machine, and after more than 40 years, he had given enough. He stopped attending red carpet events, turned down every acting offer, and retreated into a quieter life. Directors continued to approach him, hoping for a comeback, but he declined them all. When asked in 2008 if he would ever return to acting, he gave a simple response: no. He joked that the only way he'd consider it was if the entire movie was filmed inside his house so he wouldn't have to go anywhere. After leaving Hollywood, Hackman found fulfillment in his personal passions: writing, painting, and embracing a simpler life. Writing became a serious pursuit for him, and he published several historical fiction and crime novels, including Justice for None in 2004 and Pursuit in 2013. Though he had left acting behind, his creative drive never faded. He also lent his voice to 2 documentary films about the U.S. Marine Corps in 2016 and 2017, a tribute to the military unit he had once proudly served in. Painting was another private passion of his. Unlike his films and books, he never sought public attention for his artwork. "I don't want anyone to see my paintings," he once said. For him, painting was a source of tranquility, a stark contrast to the high-energy world of Hollywood. But Hackman's life wasn't just about quiet hobbies. Few people knew that in addition to being an Oscar-winning actor, he was also a professional race car driver. In the late 1970s, he competed in Sports Car Club of America races and even won the Long Beach Grand Prix Celebrity Race. His most thrilling moment came in 1983 when he participated in the grueling 24 Hours of Daytona, racing for Dan Gurney's legendary team. But not all races ended well. During a 6-hour endurance race at Sears Point Raceway, Hackman lost control of his Audi Quattro, causing it to flip. Though he walked away unharmed, he later joked that perhaps he should have let a stunt double take his place. As he grew older, he recognized that his reflexes were no longer sharp enough for racing. "You need quick reflexes, and when they start to fade, you have to stop," he admitted. For safety reasons, he retired from racing and turned his focus to more relaxed pursuits like painting and cycling. Even though he had left the world of professional racing behind, his love for cars never disappeared. Unlike many Hollywood stars who collected flashy sports cars, Hackman preferred practical yet powerful vehicles. He was often seen driving a Toyota Tundra around Santa Fe, a rugged, unpretentious truck that matched his down-to-earth personality. His past collection included a Porsche Panamera, a Mercedes E-Class, a Ford Mustang Shelby, and even a Tesla Model S, reflecting his appreciation for both classic performance and modern technology. More than anything, Hackman valued his family. He had learned from his mistakes in his first marriage, where Hollywood's distractions had contributed to his divorce. This time, he made sure that fame never came between him and his second wife and children. His life after Hollywood wasn't about chasing the spotlight, but about cherishing the people and passions that truly mattered. But what surprising choice did Hackman make when it came to his family life? Stay tuned. His story will surprise you. Gene Hackman's lasting love and legacy. For decades, Gene Hackman captivated audiences with his unforgettable performances in films like The French Connection and Superman, but behind the scenes he was a man who fiercely guarded his private life. While millions admired him for his brilliance on screen, to his family, he was simply dad and grandpa, a role he cherished even as the demands of Hollywood often kept him away. Hackman's journey as a family man began in 1956, when he married Faye Maltese, with whom he built a life for 3 decades. They welcomed 3 children: Christopher, born in 1960, followed by Elizabeth in 1962, and Leslie in 1966. Despite his rising fame, Hackman remained committed to ensuring his family was provided for, even if his presence at home was not as frequent as he wished. His relentless work ethic, driven by an admiration for the glamour of old Hollywood, made balancing career and family a challenge, one he later admitted he didn't always handle well. The pressures of Hollywood took their toll, and in 1986 Hackman and Maltese divorced. 5 years later, in 1991, he found love again with Betsy Arakawa, a classical pianist. Their relationship was a quiet but deeply loving one, marked by their shared life in Santa Fe, New Mexico, far from the glitz of Los Angeles. Unlike many Hollywood couples, their marriage remained steadfast and peaceful for over 3 decades. While Hackman largely withdrew from the public eye after retiring from acting in 2004, his devotion to his family never wavered. Despite his efforts to shield them from the pressures of his fame, his children grew up in the shadow of his success. Hackman once acknowledged how difficult it was for them, especially in California, where his name carried weight. "I couldn't always be home with them when they were growing up," he confessed in an interview. "And then, living in California, they've had my success always hanging over their heads." His children rarely spoke publicly about their father, and he respected their privacy just as he guarded his own. In rare moments, however, he did open up about his role as a father. In a 1984 interview, he spoke about the deep bond he shared with his son, Christopher. Asked if there was ever a moment when their hugs turned into handshakes, Hackman rejected the idea outright. "No, we still hug to this day," he said, emphasizing the importance of maintaining that connection. He believed one of the coldest things a parent could do was become emotionally distant, a sentiment that resonated deeply given his own strained relationship with his father. His son once considered following in his footsteps, and Hackman encouraged him, even writing monologues for him when he tried his hand at acting in New York. But Hackman ultimately recognized that his own true passion lay behind the camera as well. He had the opportunity to direct The Silence of the Lambs, but after much reflection and conversations with his children, he stepped away from the project. He never regretted the decision, later saying that his kids helped him realize it wasn't the right path for him. His daughter Elizabeth, like her siblings, remained largely out of the spotlight. Yet in fleeting moments, her presence in his life surfaced. Hackman once recalled a time in the 70s and 80s when his career hit a rough patch, so much so that he had to borrow his daughter's car to drive to auditions. Even after winning 2 Academy Awards, the ups and downs of Hollywood were a reality he never took for granted. Despite this, he always provided for his family, ensuring they never wanted for anything. Leslie, the youngest of the Hackman children, shared a touching connection with her father as well. In an interview about his film Misunderstood, he admitted that his performance in the movie was heavily influenced by his real-life experiences with his children. He recalled how deeply the film resonated with Leslie, not just because of his presence in it, but because of its emotional depth. She even encouraged her friends to see it, a rare but meaningful acknowledgement of her father's work. Over the years, she was seen by his side at various premieres, a quiet but steadfast supporter of his career. Despite his success, Hackman never relinquished the weight of having been an absent father at times. In a 2011 interview, he reflected on the challenge of attempting to guide his son from a distance. "I lost touch with my son in terms of advice early on," he admitted. "It was incredibly difficult for me to be away for 3 months and then return home and begin directing him. The guilt from those years lingered, yet he never ceased to love his children deeply. Even in retirement, he continued to seek creative fulfillment, turning to writing as a new form of storytelling. In a 2020 interview, he reflected on how his son's early acting aspirations inadvertently inspired him to become a novelist. Writing monologues for Christopher had ignited something within him, and from that point, his passion for crafting stories flourished. On 26 February 2025, Hackman and Arakawa were found in their Santa Fe home, having passed away together, along with one of their cherished dogs. The shocking news sent ripples through Hollywood and beyond. The following day, his daughters, Elizabeth and Leslie, and his granddaughter Annie released a statement expressing their heartbreak. He was loved and admired by millions around the globe for his brilliant acting career, but to us, he was always just Dad and Grandpa. We will miss him profoundly and are devastated by the loss. The cause of their deaths remains uncertain, with no indications of foul play or carbon monoxide poisoning. Friends and neighbors in Santa Fe describe them as a devoted couple who cherished their pets and each other. Their passing left a void, yet it also underscored the remarkable life they had built together. Hackman's impact on cinema is undeniable, but beyond the accolades and iconic roles, he leaves behind something far more meaningful: a legacy of love, resilience, and devotion to those who mattered most. His family now carries forward not only the fortune he amassed, but also the memories of a man who, despite the demands of fame, always remained true to the people he held dear. But what do you think truly defined Hackman's legacy? His legendary career, or the love he had for his family? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe.